Pregame.com.
Big rivalry going on Sunday Night Football when the Ravens travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. The Steelers a 3.5-point dog, the total 41. I know that sounds weird to say the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting 3.5 points at home to anybody. They were actually about a 3.5 to 4-point favorite if Big Ben wouldn't have been injured, and that's what the line was before the injury to Big Ben. But here he is. He's out for a while, Marco, and the scary part about it is he could be out for a long time if things don't turn out properly when it comes to some of the medical evaluations.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, it was all about the shoulder injury, and he had the same shoulder injury that stopped Brett Favre's streak. You know, they call it an SC shoulder sprain. But today we've learned that that's the secondary injury here. They're more concerned about the rib injury that he sustained, and it's something that if he plays with it hurt, and it could puncture his aorta or aorta. Thank you. And that's serious stuff. So we don't know how long Ben's going to be out. Got to move forward, but as Vegas always does and the public always does, I think when a superstar goes down, and let's face it, Ben is probably one of the most important quarterbacks to his team compared to some of the other teams, but I think there's an over-adjustment here in this line. Way too much
defense that they're playing. I mean, if this was the normal Baltimore defense of a couple of years ago, then Leftwich is in trouble because he's playing with concrete boots on, it looks like, half the time out there. And he can't motivate and get around and move parallel to the line of scrimmage like Big Ben does so well, to where he can buy time for his receivers to find some separation. But this isn't the same Baltimore defense we've talked about 2 or 3 years ago. And here's what Pittsburgh did before Big Ben's injury. They got back to Pittsburgh Steeler football. They ran the ball for 167, 140, and 158 yards in their 3 games prior to this last Monday night's contest. Now, they dropped under 100 in that one. They looked as flat as a pancake from the opening kick to the final gun against the Chiefs. Easy to do against that team. But the bottom line is, I'm agreeing with Marco on this one. I just think there's too much of an adjustment here. Leftwich still has that big arm. He can go deep when he needs to.
Yeah, Pittsburgh isn't going to win this game on offense. It'll be defense. You go back to the last 8 games, they've held every single opponent to 6.0 yards per pass attempt or less. That's excellent. In the last 4 weeks, they've given up 290, 182, 255, 185. Interesting stats about this series, and it's been very tightly contested. The last 4 games in Pittsburgh, every single game has been decided by exactly 3 points. So now that the game has gone over 3.5, now granted, it's a small sample size, but the last 9 times they've played, Baltimore has never lost a game by more than 4 points. So it's been very tightly contested. I would venture to say there's not 2 teams in the NFL that know each other more than these 2 teams. Not only do they play in the regular season twice, they played in the playoffs before. They're close proximity. They're usually, I hate to say it, being from Cleveland, the only 2 contenders in this division. They know each other very well. So even though Pittsburgh doesn't have their starting quarterback, I don't agree with the full line move. I mean, how many points is he really worth?
Yeah. Well, he's worth a couple, but he's not worth 7. And that's basically what we're talking about here.
4, I think.
Yeah, I think I saw 4 by a lot of Vegas books, but it's a 7 to 7.5 point adjustment since last Sunday afternoon when the lines were first posted. Marco, there's one caveat when I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they got Dick LeBeau who can make the adjustment for this. If you watch them on Monday Night Football, if you watched against Kansas City, and if you watched them against Cincinnati a few weeks before that, both of those teams, and smart coaching by Kansas City to do this, they started the game running over the right side of their offensive line at the left side of the Pittsburgh defense, which we talked about, I think it was last week or the week before, about Cincinnati doing that against Pittsburgh. But Dick LeBeau makes the great adjustments at halftime, slows things down a little bit. However, KC still had a little bit more success doing that than Cincy. You would think that Baltimore is going to at least try to do the same thing and see if they can get after the left side of this Pittsburgh defense. After seeing it twice, though, and as recently as 6 days ago, and as you like to say, when the superstar gets injured, everybody pulls up the slack a little bit. I think this Pittsburgh defense is going to be ready for this overrated Baltimore offense. This is your free pick. Let's get to it.
Well, guys, we're going to look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, the line is overinflated. The Steelers have had to play without Ben in the past. If you remember, a couple of years ago, they had to play the first 4 games of the season, because of his suspension. They're 7-5 in the 12 games since 2005 straight up that he hasn't played. They're an underdog. We just have to win the game. We don't have to cover the game. Baltimore, yes, they had a big win last week, but it was against the Oakland Raiders, a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast for a 1 o'clock start. Bad situation for them. I look for the Steelers to grind out the win. This is a Sunday night game. That's going to make it even more. That crowd is going to be, first of all, if you've ever been to a Pittsburgh game, they start tailgating at 7 a.m. They're going to be wired and juiced, ready to go. These two teams know each other well, as you said, Brian. They also hate each other. Probably the most hated rivalry in the NFL. And I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers here to get the win. It won't be pretty. Not going to get a lot of style points, but they grind out the win, grab the points, and I would wait till later in the week, wait till closer to game time, because the public is going to bet Baltimore.
When I used to do a show with Jack Snow in the 90s and early 2000s, and I used to ask him about, do you really take these rivalries seriously? The players really hate each other, and he goes, nah, not really. But when I did a show, and that was back then, but when I did a show with an ex-Pittsburgh player a couple of years ago at one of the casinos here in town, I asked that player, is this as big of a rivalry as it looks, or as the media makes it up to me? He goes, you better believe it. We hate these guys when that whistle blows with a passion, and we hate them right until the final gun, and it goes both ways, so you're absolutely right. Marco's free pick again on the Pittsburgh Steelers plus the points. One more to go. Monday Night Football, the matchup between the Bears and the Niners. Stick around for more.